Archibald Memorial Fountain, photo, City of Sydney, Chris Southward. Landmark fountain's new lease of life. The Archibald Memorial Fountain in Sydney's Hyde Park is back in action, following an extensive upgrade. Photo, Chris Southward, City of Sydney. Major improvements to the 90-year-old fountain include structural, hydraulic, electrical and mechanical work. The City of Sydney also introduced water-saving measures to minimise water loss and prevent damage to underground pipes and pumps. The State Heritage-listed fountain is a war memorial that commemorates the alliance forged by Australia and France during World War I. Created by French sculptor Francois Sicard, the fountain draws on ancient Greek themes and is an important example of Art Deco sculpture in Sydney. The fountain was a gift to the citizens of Sydney from J.F. Archibald, founding editor of the Bulletin. The Archibald Fountain is one of Sydney's most photographed landmarks, and is a nationally significant sculpture, Lord Mayor Clover Moore said. Families, friends and visitors enjoy meeting at the Archibald Fountain under the shade of tree canopy in Hyde Park, as a quiet respite from the city. While the fountain was commissioned to honor an association forged through war, the sculptor made peace the theme of this work, a message that remains as poignant today as it was a century ago. The new public art we create in Sydney is essential and exciting, like the stunning sculpture Bara near the Opera House, but it's also important we restore historical pieces so future generations can enjoy the city's many layers of history. The hexagonal fountain is around 18 meters in diameter. Photo, Chris Southward, City of Sydney. A bronze Apollo stands in the center, with mythical figures Diana, Pan and the Minotaur depicted in the work. A large arch of spray represents the rising sun, while water also spouts from horses' heads. Tortoises and dolphins direct jets of water toward the center. A lighting layout for the fountain by Robert Woodward from the 1960s was uncovered during conservation work and has been implemented by the City of Sydney. The fountain is part of the City of Sydney's public art and heritage collection. Artwork description. The Archibald Fountain is located in Hyde Park North at the centre of Birubi Circle, and at the intersection of the main avenues crossing Hyde Park. The fountain, by French sculptor Francois Sicard, commemorates the association between Australia and France in World War I. It draws its themes from Greek antiquity and is an important example in Sydney of the classical revivalist sculpture of the 1920s and 1930s, known as Art Deco. The fountain is approximately 18 meters in diameter and is in the shape of a hexagon. Photo, Chris Southward for City of Sydney. A bronze Apollo, the central raised figure standing approximately 6 meters high on a central pedestal, dominates the other mythical figures of Diana, Pan and the Minotaur. Behind Apollo, a large arch of fine spray represents the rising sun and accentuates his dominant position. At Apollo's feet, water sprays from horses' heads into a series of 3 basins. Tortoises in the large hexagonal basin, and dolphins in the middle one, direct jets of water towards the center. Subject Sicard chose a mythical theme to express his message through the medium of a fountain. Although commissioned to honor the association forged in war, the work was also to look forward to peace, and Sicard allowed the peace theme to dominate. Central to his design was Apollo giving life to all nature. Apollo was surrounded by 3 groups of figures, the first featuring Diana bringing harmony to the world, the second, Pan watching over the fields and pastures, and the third, Theseus conquering the Minotaur, symbolic of sacrifice for the common good. Artist Francois Sicard (1862–1934) was a distinguished artist, renowned in France and beyond. He studied with Louis-Ernest Barrias and Félix Laurent and was best known for work on the adornments of the Louvre. Sicard won the Premier Grand Prix de Rome in 1891 and was awarded a gold medal at the Exposition Universelle of 1900. He became an officier of the Légion d'honneur in 1910. Sicard became an influence for change among young Sydney sculptors of the 1930s, after the erection of the Archibald Fountain, by providing an imposing example of the new Art Deco style in architecture. Commission in 1919, a bequest in the will of J. F. Archibald, founding editor of the Bulletin, provided for the erection in Sydney of a symbolic, open-air memorial. As directed in Archibald's will, this was to commemorate the association between Australia and France during World War I, for the liberties of the world, and was to be sculpted in bronze by a French artist. Archibald's expressed preferences came not from his French lineage, as some erroneously thought, but from an acquired interest in modern French culture, which he admired for its clarity of thought and resourceful originality. Archibald stipulated that the money be invested for 7 years before work began on the memorial. Francois Sicard was selected as sculptor for the memorial in July 1926 after a series of interviews in Paris by the President of London's Royal Academy. The figures, sculpted in bronze by the lost wax process, took several years to complete, but they were ready for display in Paris at the Grand Palais in May 1930, before being sent to Australia. The display was greeted with enthusiasm and praise both in Paris and London. The fountain was handed over to the City of Sydney on 14 March 1932, following delays caused by customs duty, and is integral to the design of Hyde Park. Inscriptions. The primary inscription reads, "The Archibald Memorial Fountain, a gift to the citizens of Sydney, under the will of the late J. F. Archibald, 14 March 1932. Alderman S. Walder, Lord Mayor of Sydney." A tablet attached to the large base supporting the figure of Theseus reads, "This fountain is the gift of the late J. F. Archibald, to his fellow countrymen and is intended in terms of his will to commemorate the association of Australia, and France in the Great War 1914–1918. It was erected in 1932 and is the work of Francois Sicard, sculptor, Paris. An inscription on the St. Mary's Cathedral side reads, "Apollo represents the arts, beauty and light. Apollo holds out his right arm as a sign of protection and spreads his benefit over all nature while he holds a lyre in his left hand. Apollo is the warm which vivifies, giving warmth to all nature. At the touch of his ray men awake, trees and fields become green, the animals go out into the fields and men go to work at dawn. At Apollo's feet the star of day is indicated by a semicircle of which the rays spread out in jets of light, the rising sun. The horses' heads represent the horses of Apollo's chariot. Out of the nostrils, water falls into the first basin, to fall there into the second and run away into the large basin. The large basin is decorated with 6 tortoises which throw jets of water. The large basin is divided into 3 groups. One represents Diana, goddess of purity, of peaceful nights, symbol of charity, the ideal which watches over mortals, all that stands for poetry and harmony. The Pan group symbolizes the good things of the earth. It is the young god of the fields and pastures and of the countryside. The third group represents sacrifice for the public good. Theseus, vanquisher of the Minotaur. The spirit triumphs over bestiality. Theseus delivers his country from the ransom which it had to pay to this monster. It is the sacrifice of himself for the good of humanity. Between these groups dolphins throw jets of water. Conservation extensive preservation work was undertaken by the City of Sydney in 2013 and 2022. All important links will be posted on description.